Hello, fellow stampers. This is Yana Smakula for My Favorite Things. Welcome back for another video tutorial. In this video, we're making fun and quirky Christmas cards with the My Favorite Things Christmas Cardinals stamp set. Let's dive right in. I wanted to create a snowy tree background, almost like a forest background for my first card. The Christmas Cardinals stamp set features two Christmas tree images, so I went ahead and stamped both several times onto Neenah Solar White cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, which is a Copic marker friendly ink. I will be coloring all of my images today with Copic markers, so I picked the kind of ink that is not going to bleed when it comes in contact with alcohol from my markers. I'm using a mini Misty stamping tool here simply to make it easier to stamp the images and have the stamping process go a bit faster. I stamped nearly one full panel of one of the trees and then another panel with the other tree, a cardinal, and a branch the bird was going to sit on. You certainly don't need to use the Misty tool. These images can be as easily stamped using a good old clear block, but for me, I've found Misty to make the process go faster and easier. Next, we need to add some color to these, and I'm going to do so using a mix of Copic markers and a white Sakura pen to add highlights. I already tried coloring one of the trees using my markers, but I didn't quite like that coloring method. So here I'm trying a different approach. I'm starting with my darkest color. This is G99, and I'm flicking the color from the middle of the tree onto the branches. I'm using a light hand and a flicking motion. I want to have visible flicks, visible brush strokes on my finished image. Next, I'm using my medium color. This is G94, and again, flicking the color, flicking more color, this time extending it further into the branches, but not to the end. I'm not being careful. I am not coloring the entire surface of the tree. If there is an area that is left uncolored, I leave it like that, as that sort of mimics snow. Finally, I use the lightest green, YG03, and extending the flicks to the end of the branches. I like how this looks and the ease with which I'm able to color this. The previously colored tree took me probably 3 times longer to color, as I was going from light to medium to dark and then medium to dark again. So basically the proper way to color and blend, but the finished piece didn't give me the desired look. This flick style coloring is much more suitable for these images here. Now, I also used E37 and E33 to color the trunk of the tree brown. And here's the look at all of the trees colored. I'm now going to add some snow using a white pen. I'm using my Sakura pen in size 8 and adding lines on each of the branches mimicking snow. It instantly changes the look of the trees and adds a more wintry look and feel to them. I love this trick. Now, we also have the branch and the cardinal to color. I'm using R22, R24, and R39 to color the Christmas hat red. Here, I'm going from light to medium to dark, and then to light again to achieve the gradual blending on the hat. I'm also using R24 and R39 to color the berries on the branch red. To color the body of the bird, I'm using B000 and B00. I love how Melania from the My Favorite Things design team colored her birds, and my coloring here was inspired by her work. I also used an R20 marker for the belly and rosy cheeks of the bird, and then a colorless blend marker to soften these colors. If you ever struggle with picking the right colors or selecting a color combination to color your images, go and look on Instagram for other ideas, for other card ideas, or you can go to the My Favorite Things store and check other project inspiration for a particular stamp set. I find that to be very helpful. I used a YR15 and YR18 markers to color the beak, and that pretty much finished the coloring of the bird. I also added highlights using the same white pen that I used to add snow to the Christmas trees that I colored previously. Next, I cut these images out using coordinating dies. I have a pile of fun die cuts on my desk now, and I'm going to work on my background first. Now, I have a pattern that I stamped previously. This was a test pattern, and I'm going to use this pattern as a guide to build my background, to build my forest. Starting from the top, I'm adding 3 rows of trees, creating a very dense forest for my cardinal to sit in. Next, I need to adhere all of these die cuts in place. I'm using a mix of foam adhesive squares. I'm using small squares and even cutting some of the squares into smaller strips to hide behind the trees, and also using glue to adhere other die cuts flush onto the background. Now, as for the background panel itself, I'm using a panel of light blue cardstock. I wanted it to look a bit like the sky, or perhaps the white snow that has a bit of a blue tint to it from reflecting the pure blue sky above. Now, I'm shaping the trees a little bit with my fingers to have a slight dimension to these die cuts. You might have also noticed that I taped the panel onto my background. I find it to be very helpful to have the panel secured in place when adhering things on top. I don't like when my panel moves all the time, so I often tape it down using washi tape. If you have a metal surface and some magnets, you can also secure it in place with the magnets. And look, I love the way that this forest turned out. I used scissors and cropped the parts of the trees that were going outside the edge of my panel, outside the edge of the background. And I also adhered this panel onto an A2 white side folding card base. Next, I'm using foam adhesive squares. This time, I'm going with large size squares to foam mount the sentiment panel onto the card. I white heat embossed the sentiment on a panel of red cardstock and trimmed that to a banner. I'm foam mounting the little branch that my cardinal is going to sit on, and then also foam mounting the bird on top. Now, I wanted to add lots of falling snow to the background, so I pulled out my Jane Davenport white pen and added large size dots onto the background. I love how this added some interest and detail to my background. I also embellished this card with small clear droplets. I just added a few here and there on the card, and that finished this project. Now, if you don't have a white pen like this, you can also use Nuvo drops in white and add dimensional white dots onto the background. I think that would look also super cool. Now, I have one more card idea to share with you. For this card, I wanted to make a Christmas wreath. I stamped a bunch of holly branches and colored them using 2 sets of green markers. For the first one, I used YG99, YG95, and YG93 colors. These gave me a grayish olive color, very similar to the actual holly leaves, dark, deep green. And then the other green combo I used was the one that I used to color the trees, YG03, G94, and G99. I also cut the images out using coordinating die, and here you can see me building the wreath using these die cuts. Now, I forgot to mention that I also added white highlights onto the leaves and also added white dot highlights onto the berries. I feel like this is a must-do for holiday die cuts or holiday cards. I also stamped this fern-like leaf in black ink and colored it using the same Copic markers as before to add some green color to it. You can see I have already stamped and colored another bird. Now, I didn't show the coloring process as I used the same colors of markers and colored this bird in the same way as I colored the first one. Again, I cut everything out with coordinating dies, and here you can see me building the wreath. I ended up needing 8 of each image, so 8 leaves and 8 holy branches, 4 in one color and 4 more in another green color. The sentiment was created in the same way, white heat embossed on red, and was foam mounted onto the card. In the end, I decided I wanted this card to be landscape, not portrait. And I also added white snow dots onto the background outside the wreath, and again, embellished this card with clear droplets. So here's a look at the Christmas cards I have for you today, created with the My Favorite Things Christmas Cardinals stamp set. I had a blast making these cards, and I hope you've picked a few tips and tricks in my video and will give these ideas a go yourself. If you do, you know the drill. Please share online and tag us on social media. We always love seeing what you guys are making. Subscribe now and do hit that bell icon not to miss any new card making tutorials. Thanks for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.